Well, greetings, everyone. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, and I am here with my good friend and my associate and my co-host, Lana Orlando, and we're here for wake-up calls. And this is, believe it or not, this is already our 7th episode. Today, our title is Psyched Out. So we're going to have fun with that title. Lana, hello, welcome. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do, and let's take it from there.
Yes, well, I am Lana Orlando, and that's who I am. At least that's the role that I'm playing in this incarnation at this moment. And I call myself an awareness and ascension coach. I like to help people become self-aware, which is why this topic today is going to be a lot of fun for me. Well, they all are fun. And you said that this is our 7th episode. However, in my podcast series, Align with Lina, we did 5 or 6 wake-up calls there. So I've got some wake-up calls there, and I've been adding these to it. So
right. Those ones I think we did with a slightly different perspective. We were looking more at, the current events situation. Now I think we're coming at it from a different perspective, really trying to help awaken people into their spirituality. So although we use the same title, I think the flavor of our conversations is a little different.
It's slightly different, yes. But I threw this in here because I know some people listen to that and they were saying, "Oh, did you change up? Are you doing things different now?" And so throwing that in here just in case you've listened to the other wake up calls and you're listening to these also
Right.
on my podcast. I am super thrilled to be having this conversation with you today. Like you were saying, we are attempting to help drop as many nuggets, plant as many seeds as possible that will assist people with their awakening, because we are in the middle of a mass awakening, and getting psyched out is so important to understand the psychology, the psyche, and all of that in this incredible awakening that we're in the midst of, for a very important reason. If you don't know what's happening and it's happening, you're going to feel discombobulated. And we did a call one time called that. You're going to have cognitive dissonance. There's going to be confusion. But the more that we drop these beautiful little nuggets, the more that we hope it will facilitate people's process through their own awakening. And that's really one of the main reasons why I do this with you, besides wanting, loving having conversations with you, is dropping helpful nuggets to help people through what's coming, because it's coming.
Right. It's not only is it coming, it's already here. It's just that more and more people are starting to wake up to it. And I was thinking about this the other day. There's a way in which I don't know if you feel the same way about this, but in my heart, it just seems to me that we have a responsibility to share whatever truth we happen to be blessed with. It's our job to share that out and to basically give it away. And that poses a problem for people like you and me, because we're coaches and we want to help as many people as possible. And at the same time, we got to make a living. So it's I don't know about you, but I have a challenge asking for money. I know that what I offer has a great deal of value, and I know that if I asked for the money, I'd probably get it. But up until this point, I noticed that I've had some challenges with that. And maybe that's something for me to deal with in my own process of clearing my psyche out, It's something for us to think about.
Yeah. I don't have problem asking for money, but I definitely feel that what I'm sharing doesn't belong to me. So I love to be able to share it in as many places as I can. I mean, I do free online classes on a weekly basis. I speak as many places as I can. I'm constantly, I write, I offer all that I possibly can, because I love to give away what has helped me so much. And, what I teach, for a very long time, I thought it was Lina's method. But what became clear is that I'm just sharing truth. That's all we're doing here. We're sharing truth from our own individual perspectives. And people can say, well, how do you know it's truth? Because it's the same goddamn thing everybody else says that speaks truth. So there's nothing new here.
Yeah,
We're all
exactly right. Yes.
magnificent divine beings. We're all children of the creative source. We were each created equal. We were endowed with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Every major philosophy, teaching, spiritual, whatever that I have studied that touched my heart all said the same thing. And so how can it be mine? It's the truth that belongs to all of us. And I just love saying it. And yeah, sometimes I have to charge because I've got bills to pay. And I'll say I've chosen to share this information as my livelihood, but really this information kind of found me and basically got hold of me. So I have no problems charging for whatever, but at the same time, I make what I do so affordable. For a while, I didn't want to be so expensive. For a while, I wanted to charge more because other coaches charge more. I mean, I've got coaches that I know charge $400 or $500 an hour, and good for them. But for me, it's not my information. So if I can make it as accessible, because everything that I teach, whether if you come and pay for it or you're a coach for it, it's in every one of my classes. It's in every one of my free videos. Go to my YouTube, go to my podcast. It's all there. All the secrets. There are no secrets that I hold back. So
I think it's interesting, you said something, it's like, it's all there. We all have access to it. And another phrase that some of us may have heard is that there's nothing new under the sun. Although I don't think they were referring to the sun specifically, they're just saying within the universe, all knowledge, all wisdom, all truth is there. And part of what you and I are doing is a big part, I think, is we're sharing our perspective as we become more aware of higher levels of truth. We just say, hey, guess what we saw over here, guys? Check this out, and that's really what we're doing. And the whole beauty of our process is, I think, we all kind of go through that challenge in life where we have to deal with an ego mind. And what you and I are teaching, and this is something that I think people really need to get, is the ego mind is not who we are. The ego mind is just kind of an aspect of our temporary physical humanity. And it'll go away when we leave this physical body behind and then kind of move on to the next spiritual adventure. But what I think is important for us, even while we're here in this physical plane, is to become more and more aware by allowing that ego mind to get quieter and quieter and quieter, so that we reach that point of transcendence that we were talking about 2 episodes ago, I think, where we talked about the stages of the ego. Maybe that was 3 episodes ago. Anyway, I think this whole journey is an amazingly beautiful thing. And what I have come to realize is that this thing called truth, this big, ginormous ball of truth, is really all there is. It's everything. It's basically God. It's love. It's all of it. And the only reason that any 2 people might disagree on what that is because they're looking at it from different points of view. And so that's really what our objective is to keep reminding ourselves and reminding each other that a point of view is simply a temporary data point. Mm-hmm. And the moment you shift, and we talked about that last time in our perspective shift, I think, the moment you shift, you see something new. Now, does that make what you previously knew wrong or false? No, it doesn't. It's just new information. That's all it is. So this whole process is beautiful. And so today we're talking a little bit about the spirituality and the psychology and how they work together. And Lana's a much greater expert on this topic than I am, so I'm going to leave most of it to her, but we'll discuss points as we go along.
No, you do a fabulous job, dear. Absolutely fabulous. What was really fun to talk about in the last conversation when this topic came up was about, getting psyched. That whole psychology, that whole psyche, those are kinds of conversations that often in the spiritual, um, I'm going to say conversations like this, shows, whatever, doesn't really get talked about specifically because we talk a lot about spiritual healing and connecting with our spiritual nature. And that for most people is the ultimate goal. Becoming enlightened is to come into full connection with our spirit, with our soul, with our light. But to get there, and both of us, we've mentioned Course in Miracles many times because we're both students of it, and I also happen to, for the last 10 years, teach from it. So I delve into it in just for a lot of detail, because if I'm teaching from it, I want to be well versed in it. But in the course, there is a specific line that says that enlightenment is not something that you achieve. Enlightenment is something you recognize you already are. And so many people are chasing the light. They want to get to enlightenment. They want to go to nirvana. They want to live in heaven. They want to have all these beautiful transcendent experiences. Some have had it with psychedelics. Talk about getting psyched out. Some have had it with meditation. Some have had it with plant medicine. I've done a little bit of some of those things, more of some, less of others. But there are lots of ways to achieve that experience. Again, because you have access to that. So you just drop the barriers for a little while. But what doesn't get talked about as much, and the reason, in my opinion, is because most people who will talk about enlightenment really haven't fully, completely transcended their own psychology. So it's really hard to talk about something that you haven't quite fully experienced yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know for me, and part of my journey, I talked about a lot of things that I knew were possible that I hadn't quite yet either fully experienced or mastered those steps to move me on to the next thing that I knew was coming. But the psychology part is where most people get trapped, because our egoic sense of self, our identity is very fluid in many ways, and it's very insidious. It can morph. And I mean, just look at any person, how we easily morph into being liked or taking on roles that get people to notice us, to talk about us. We're chameleons. Well, our ego is a chameleon, and it will take on, to me, the last egg to crack, the hardest one to really transcend, is our spiritualized psychology, where we think we know everything spiritually. And you don't have to look very far than religion to see a bunch of people with an identity in spirituality who think that they know all the answers, all living from their head, talking from their head, talking about things that are so not of spirit, like controlling and better than, pitting people against each other, hierarchies, male dominate particular religions, things like that, abuse of children, things that just absolutely are not of the loving creative source of all that is. So looking at psychology, I think, is one of the most difficult conversations to have, because you have to be either very clear in terms of the work that you've done to transcend some of your psychology, or at the very least, you recognize your psychology and you're not distracted by it. You're not fooled by it, like we talked about last week, so that you can be very deliberate in your ability to peel those psychological layers that block us from the awareness of the enlightenment that is already there. It's inherent already within us. Somebody that I enjoyed, I'm guessing you might have listened to at some point in your journey, but it's a relatively modern day person. Although he did transition, I want to say a year or two ago, but I used to really enjoy. Two people just came to mind, so I'll share both names. Both have transitioned, but I enjoyed listening to them because even though I didn't go to them as my spiritual teachers, whenever I could listen to a YouTube or have an opportunity, well, that's mainly where I listen to them, or I might have purchased some of their material and listened to some of their CDs. There were two people who I knew early on in my journey, and even before I was on a spiritual journey, but I listened to them and I went, these people really understand their mind. They are really clear that they're not their thoughts. One is Alan Watts and the other one was Ram Dass. And whenever I would listen to them, Ram Dass more in his later years, earlier years, some of that his information was, I could tell he was definitely obviously studying with the guru and he was learning. But the later year materials, I could tell this man found his way beyond his psychology, and he was connecting through the spirit that we all share. And that to me is really what enlightenment's all about, is we come to know the truth of who we are, and then all of a sudden, oh, wait, we're one. What? That's where this leads? Yeah, it leads us back to remembering that we're all connected. And so that to me is the fun of this particular journey, is moving through that mental stuff until we get to the place where we empty ourselves of the mental stuff and discover, oh, we are really one. And then that starts a whole new journey.
Right. That's fascinating. And, as you were talking, I'm thinking about this whole notion of psychology, which I think is a relatively new science. I mean, it's only been around for maybe 100 years, 120 years, something like that. And, or maybe longer than that. Yeah. But I think around the end of the 1800s is when it really kind of started. What's happened since in that time frame, what's happened is now psychology has become like another religion for us. We try to solve every human problem by looking at it from a psychological perspective. And if we define some symptoms associated with a particular, I don't know, let's call it a disorder, for want of another term, then what we end up doing is we immediately start engaging with the pharmaceutical companies, and they start creating drugs to deal with the symptoms of this disorder. And so we've created this huge, ongoing, self-fulfilling monster, if you like. It's constantly feeding on itself. And I don't know if you've paid attention to this. I mean, I'm not a psychologist myself, although I've studied psychology. The what do they call the DSM, the diagnostic something manual? I can't remember what that DSM stands for, but it's gone through like 5 or 6 iterations, and every iteration they add in another 100 pages of new disorders. They're constantly adding to it. It's funny that nothing ever actually gets solved by the stuff that they're supposedly dealing with these symptoms for, and yet we get more diseases. Now, I wonder where those additional diseases are coming from. Could they be related to some kind of, I don't know, side effects from some of the drugs that have been used to deal with the symptoms in the first place? I don't know. It's just...
I can in here is freezing.
Oh, hold yeah, your camera just temporarily frozen, but I can hear you. That's okay.
Okay, now I can hear you perfectly. So I heard you say about all of those new diseases or new things, new labels that are given. So just say the last 30 seconds that you had just shared.
Right. I was just saying all these new diseases that keep showing up. I said, is it possible that they could be somehow influenced by, as part of the side effects of the drugs that we created to fix the previous diseases? And, I mean, I don't want to start, conspiracy theory conversation here, but it sure seems like it's a good deal for the pharmaceutical companies and the marriage between them and the psychologists, because they just keep perpetuating new diseases, and their business model keeps going and going and going.
Yes.
I think that's a very, very convenient aspect of this. And
Yeah. Well, I think we need to get past this whole nonsense about feeding conspiracy theory, because it's very clear. Everything that gets labeled a conspiracy now is nothing more than somebody who's really starting to dig in and do the work that journalists should be doing. And when average people are doing that work, including some journalists who don't work for a big box media company, what they're discovering is that there is so much that has been done that is affecting humans, not only at a physical level, but at a mental and spiritual level as well. And there is no way to have a conversation about psychology without also looking at psychiatry, without looking at all of the ways that humans have been used as guinea pigs for a very, very long time.
Right.
And that's part of why the awakening is happening right now, is too many people are sick and tired of doing what they've been told that they're supposed to do so that they get to be okay, and nobody's okay. Everybody has some level of issue.
Right.
And those of us who have been able to work through the not being okay and unravel this insanity inevitably come to the place that we understand that when you are not in control of your psychology, somebody else is controlling it for you.
Yeah.
And that is the bottom line to me of this whole journey of awakening. Either you begin the process because you want to get to know who you are, or you begin the process because you're sick and tired of being what everybody else wants you to be. Either way, it leads you to the same place. I mean, it's
Right.
like two ways to come in to the same thing. And the whole industry that has taken advantage of the way the mind works and its relationship to the body and chemicals, that entire industry that has understood that when we have thoughts, we produce certain chemicals, and then they create chemicals and give us pills and all these kinds of things to try and affect this incredible chemical factory that we all operate with. They understand the way the mind-body relationship. I got to give them that. They do know if you put this thing in here, it's going to do this to the body. But what they do not understand, or I'm going to say they understand it enough to be dangerous, but they don't really fully understand it, or they wouldn't do what they're doing. And that is the spirit part of things. And to me, the most exciting part of a conversation that talks about understanding our psychology is so that we can move beyond it. That's why we call this Psyched Out. We want to go beyond our psychology and begin to cultivate a relationship with our spirit. And as you know, the only reason most people are disconnected from their spirit is because we're kept distracted at the mental and physical level. If you're numbed out taking pills, or you're numbed out because you're an addict, because you're numbing your body from the pain of the incessant mental, craziness in your head, disempowerment or fear or jealousy or whatever it is, whatever rages in the head, if you've got somebody who can sell you a pill so you won't feel that, you will never be able to transcend your psychology. Your psychology runs your life. And now you've got a body that's not working very well for you. With those two things at odds, it's going to be very difficult to find your spiritual nature. And that's
right.
just
Well,
all there's
not
to
just those two things, but also what I'm calling now indoctritainment. They don't call television programming for no reason, and television, it had such great potential for opening us up and providing all kinds of great information. But dark forces have taken it over and have repurposed it, not to entertain us, but rather to indoctrinate us into a certain way of thinking. They provide just enough of the dopamine producing chemicals so that we keep coming back to watch more. They have figured out how to put these episodes and stories together. So we don't just watch a show once a week. We watch, all 15 episodes of a series back to back over the course of a couple of days. They call it binge watching now.
Yeah.
And so here we are living in a world where all of this stuff is going on. And it's no wonder that so many people are, losing connection with themselves. Yeah, the drugs are a problem. Alcohol's a problem. Gambling's a problem. Other things that we try to do to numb ourselves out. All of those are part of the problem, but it's been created by this consumerist madness that we have built up over the last 100 years or so, in conjunction with, like I said, with all these psychologists, and I say certain dark forces that see a way to control people. And that's part of what we're dealing with right now. And that's what I think people are waking up to.
Yes, absolutely. And you say certain dark forces, but the thing about those dark forces is that we're all capable of them. And a dark force is nothing more than a blocking of the light that we are. It is a not being able to access the part of us that in the light, in its goodness, in its benevolence, cares about all that is, cares about everybody. It's that kindness, that compassion, that co-creative, collaborative energy that moves us and connects us. And somebody who's under the influence of their darkness is basically operating, it's really from one place, and it's absolute, total, and complete selfishness. And we can become selfish. We absolutely can become selfish as part of the option of incarnated on planet Earth. And when we have a physical experience and we get assigned this bodysuit, well, we think this is mine. And the selfishness begins with I'm here and you're there, and that whole idea of separation. A mind that is not trained early on with a conscious parent or a conscious community or a conscious, whatever it might be, to help us realize that we have these separate bodies, but not to use it against each other, not to go to war with one another, but rather to use it in collaboration, we wouldn't develop dark forces. But the dark forces get developed when we are not being taught how to utilize our seeming separation for the greater good of all. That's a good thing that we're separate, so you can go work over there while I'm working over here. We were all conjoined twins. Where do we start? Where do we end? It'd be a mess. Nobody'd be able to there wouldn't be a big enough door for all of us to go through. So
I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, from a spiritual perspective, because light and dark, it's all part of the same energy. It's all part of the allness, the oneness, the all that is. I think what I'm referring to is more, when I talk about dark forces, I'm talking about people who have either lost their connection, as you say, or are deliberately trying to prevent other people from finding their connection because they don't want others to discover the truth for fear that their own situation might change or they'll lose. This is why we have people who are multi billionaires. They're I don't know, not all of them, but some of them have this sense that, well, there's not enough for me, so I have to hoard as much as I can and build up as much as I can. Well, that's pure ego. Mm-hmm. That's pure psychology, dark psychology, actually, in motion. And what we need to do is say, well, this is not working, and it's not up to me to well, maybe it is up to me, actually, to wake those billionaires up so that they can see that their own fear-based thinking is what's causing this behavior in the first place. But that's another question that I'd like to ask anyway. Where does my responsibility end? I mean, like, how much am I supposed to be doing as an enlightened being or a person on a path to enlightenment? How much am I supposed to be doing to wake up other people? How much? I hear people say to me, well, you've got to give everyone their own chance to wake up on their own, and on some level, I agree with that. But at some point, I think we have to say, well, this house is burning down. I think maybe it's time for me to, knock the door down, go in and drag them out and wake them up. I don't know. What do you think? At what point do we draw the line and say, this is no longer my responsibility?
Well, I'll touch base on that, but let me go to what you said first. And it's the comment that when we are disconnected, when we are begin to cultivate a psychological profile that has us disconnect from others, disconnect from our true source, when we're no longer tapping into the goodness and the godness and the godliness within us, and we begin to cultivate this greedy, selfish, and it can go as dark as evil and satanic. You could even call it that.
Right.
They do exactly what you just said. Make certain that nobody else discovers that there is another possible way. So everybody gets indoctrinated into the follow me down this path. But of course, they tend to be the ones who are the narcissists and there's so many different words, psychological words to use to that. I prefer not to break it down into so many different things. It's plain and simple. You're either aligned with truth or you're not. That's it. That's all that there is to it. And the truth of God, that we're all created equal. And to me, those foundational truths that we can all agree on, even though not everybody agrees on, are to me as simple as it needs to be. When we realize that we are all connected, that we are all part of the same energy expressing itself individually, something begins to happen to the person that is going to want to find out, how did I miss this? How do I get back there? How do I correct this?
Right.
There's going to be that group, but there's going to be a group that doesn't want to know, and they don't want to know because they're here, as I see it, on a soul contract. They're not going to wake up in this lifetime, no matter how many times we set our hair on fire. They are on their journey and they're going to do what they're going to do because that is their path. Oftentimes, I find that their path in getting darker is directly correlated to the assisting of our path in getting lighter. Because the more insane they get, the more it makes you go, what the heck? So we do need a certain number. I don't know what that percentage is. It doesn't really matter, but we need those who are going down on the seesaw for the rest of us to climb up on the seesaw. I mean, that's just the way that it works. So at what point do we try to get somebody to see what's going on and help them wake up? I say, for me, I'm going to do it till the day that I die. The difference between now and the way I used to do it before is, before I was attempting to do what I was doing for a specific person. I needed my former husband or my best friend or my sister or my son to get it. Now, I just share because I share, and whoever's supposed to get it will get it. And if my kids don't get it from me, they get it from you, or they get it from Billy Bob, in Uruguay. Well, then that's the way it's going to happen. But here in this world that we live in, we are here as one, whether you're conscious of it or not. We're here as one energy expressing itself individually. And everything that I do for another, I know I'm doing it for me. If I don't see the fruits of that labor, let's say today, I'm going to incarnate into that energy that I am becoming the change that is changing the environment that eventually I'll reincarnate into down the road. So understanding that life is eternal, I no longer worry about this lifetime. I'm thinking many, many, many more lifetimes, because I have many. I feel really clear that I'm going to come back and continue to assist on planet Earth with whatever's happening here, moving us into the higher dimensions. I'm cool with that. So,
you're just cool.
So do we go into the house and drag them out while their, hair is on fire? Maybe not. I think that that's something that we have to decide in the moment. Is that mine to do? God, source, spirit, whatever. Is that mine to do? If I'm feel inspired and run in there and pull them out, I will. And if I don't, I don't. And I'm okay with that. But sharing what I know, back to our earlier bit of the conversation, you and I cannot not share what we know. That's why you fill your social media with your beautiful quotes and your shares, and constantly, I read this article and I saw this video, and we're putting it out there for whoever wants to take it, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. But it still goes down to the psychology of a person who is operating in such a deranged way, that in this world today, we are in the midst of deciding, do we let people, have their hair be on fire and not wake up, or do we help them? Because it's pretty crazy how, what's the word? Help me with the word here, but it's so absolutely prevalent everywhere that people are in the midst of an awakening. I mean,
Right.
it's obvious that there's this way and there's this way. And it's become really clear. It's one or the other. It's the light or the dark. It's the good or the evil. It's the awake or the asleep. That's pretty much it. And we're seeing this bifurcation. And I don't know how many are going to want to come over to the other side. But
Right. Well, you know so part of what you said really kind of got me, and I was thinking about this as you were speaking. You said that as the people on the light side are clawing their way up and the other people are trying to come up too. It seems like, I think what you said was, you're either going to be on one side or the other. The implication being that we can't all go to the light. And I find that a little bit distressing. I believe in my heart and in my soul that we all can go to the light. And I think ultimately we all will. It's just right now, because we seem separated and we seem, like these unique, individuated expressions of spirit, as you say, it seems like we all have a different path to follow. But really, it's just, it's one path, because we're all going back to the same place in the long run.
Yeah. I would say it's even more clear than that. We're not all going back to the same place, but we've never left the one place that we've always been at to begin with.
Yeah.
So there is not anybody gets left behind. But what began to make sense for me was to look at lives as basically performances for an actor or an actress. And every lifetime is a performance. And in this performance, if I'm going to play the Lana, I'm going to have a trajectory. I'm going to have a role that I'm going to play. So maybe in this lifetime, I may not necessarily wake up. I may still be doing a lot of things that are accumulating karma that is going to endarken me, is going to have me be more frustrated, more alone, more suffering. And so in every single lifetime, we've got billions of characters all moving on whatever path they're going on towards more light or away from the light, because that's the only two places you can go. So it's not that there is anybody that's going to be left behind, but there are many that are choosing a role that is not moving them towards the light in this lifetime. And those people that move, that operate in very evil roles, let's call it that perpetuate a ton of suffering. Some of them in this lifetime, once they are stopped or once they are called and questioned about what they have participated in, may begin their process towards the light. That's possible. Anything is possible. I definitely don't know everybody's path for sure in terms of in a lifetime, but I do know that for sure everybody is already in the light, pretending that they're not. And to what degree you're pretending to be away from the light, to that degree, you are literally facilitating somebody finding their way back to the light. Let me see how, I don't know what example to give to show that. But if you push, have you ever seen those old lava lamps that had that stuff inside that moved really slowly?
Yeah.
Well, when you push something and you have it begin to move this way, there's a wave in the other side that's coming in the other direction. Well, as you and I have seen, just looking at the way humanity is operating right now, because let's just use the entire medical stuff that's going on right now. We had the virus, we had the jabs, we had whatever you want to call them, and a lot of people who have been speaking up against making these things mandatory. Many of them scientists, doctors, biologists, people with lots of information, lots of education, saying no, that this product is not good. Well, those people, they may not necessarily in the beginning have been saying this product that they're trying to push on people is dark and bad. But we are the light. We're going to push back and we're going to change their minds. We're going to go out there and have them change their ways and come to God or whatever it might be. They were just simply pushing back. They were saying, no, this is not okay. Here's the evidence. And then you've got the other side pushing. And at some point, there is going to be a crossover where there are going to be some who are saying, we have all the evidence why this thing doesn't work. They will have somebody who will hear them on the side that's pushing those things. And then there are those who are pushing these things that are not good for whatever reason, that are going to make it so that they are going to keep doing that maybe for the rest of this lifetime. So there is always an opportunity to change your mind. And the way we change our mind, I feel, is by a willingness to question our psychology. Just because I have a science degree, does that mean I know everything about science? Just because I have, this PhD or this whatever, or I run this lab, do I know everything that there is? And just that willingness to maybe not know everything, I think, is what we're seeing more and more of now. People who are speaking up, who are sharing what they know, and some are not going to stop sharing the truth that they have discovered because it does serve humanity. And some who are peddling darkness, they're not going to stop because their life depends on it. And that's why we're so polarized, is we're to the point where our life depends on it, on one side or the other. But everybody can wake up, everybody can go dark. I mean, at any point. This is consciousness. There's nothing solid here.
That's right. Yeah, when you're talking about if I had a PhD, does that mean I know everything about this? One of the jokes that I remember hearing when I was actually going for my PhD is, you get to know more and more about less and less.
Yeah.
That's really kind of what the highly focused study is all about. What I have begun doing in my more recent years, I'd say within the last 10 or 12 years, I've really started looking at topics that are way outside my expert area, my areas of expertise, because I do want to broaden my horizons rather than narrowing them. And so I've looked at many, many different books, different writers, as you have too, I know. Not all spiritual stuff, some, kind of dark stuff, just to try and understand what's going on. And I think all of us need to do some of that. If I want to, well, first of all, I want to say I really love your perspective on how people show up. I mean, we're all in the light pretending to be in the dark. I think that's what you said. And this whole pretending thing comes to be our reality. It's like, it's this whole story about the Matrix. You take the red pill to get out of the Matrix, or the blue pill to enjoy the continued the joy of being in the Matrix, And so it's like that. We have those choices at every time. But I also think that there's another aspect to this, that Once you have chosen, if you choose that red pill, it's pretty hard to go back afterwards. It's pretty hard. If you decide that you want to move into the light and start living with the light and reconnecting to your spiritual nature, you're going to have a hard time shutting yourself down later.
Yeah.
In this lifetime, anyway. Now, you might go through another lifetime down the road where you go through the process all over again and maybe stay in the dark longer. I don't know. But what I'm saying is, I have noticed this for myself. I've been over there. I've tasted that amazing joy juice that comes with being in the bliss. And man, I want more of that, not less of it. So when my ego mind kind of comes back in and takes control, I really say, wait a minute, that's not where I want to be. I have to bring myself some love and say, okay, time to quiet the ego mind, move it to the side, and look at that light again, because that's where the truth is.
Well, that's our point of power. That's really our only point of power, is in the ability to choose to continue to suffer or not, to move
Right.
towards the joy or to stay in the judgment and the righteousness. So that is, to me, the sweet spot where there's no turning back. Once you realize you're the one doing it to yourself, nobody else is doing it to you. Once that becomes clear, because you now know you're not a body, and what you are is the consciousness that is thinking the thoughts that creates the experience of contraction or expansion, of darkness or light. Once we get to the place that becomes super clear, there is zero turning back. Because who would hurt themselves when they know you're the one hurting yourselves with how you're perceiving things?
Right.
But to get to that place, that is where the work is really, really challenging, and there was something in the Course in Miracles that I read a long time ago. Early on, I saw this and I went, this can't possibly be. But it's in the section called a manual for teachers. So it's specifically written for somebody who has really taken the material very seriously, to the point that they want to become a teacher of God, a teacher of the truth in the Course in Miracles. And it said, that everybody is called to return to the truth, but very few will actually do it. And I used to think, very few, if I can do it, anybody can. And I'm like talking to all my spiritual friends, and I began to realize not everybody is going to dismantle the need to be right in order to taste the joy that comes from being totally and completely neutral on a subject. Because to turn off the ego mind means that you've got to stop needing to be right. And you were talking about, the I was married to a PhD, and I know how difficult it is to talk to a PhD, especially when you're a convention of PhDs. Oh my goodness, those were funny times. But anyhow, this need to be right is so prevalent in the psychology that forms the ego, and it's only prevalent. It's going to be very different going forward with the new generations, but it's very prevalent in our generations for sure, and older, because of being right is always associated with a reward, and being wrong is associated with a punishment. And because we've been trained to avoid punishment at all cost, we don't give ourselves permission to possibly, well, maybe I am wrong. And not knowing makes me curious. It doesn't make me wrong. It makes me curious. It makes me open. And that to me, once you begin to become super curious about every effect to every thought that you have, you realize that cause and effect aspect of everything. Every thought has an equal effect that goes with it, a consequence, if you want to call it that. But the minute that you know that your thoughts let you have joy or let you have suffering, now that's freedom. That's freedom. And then you see everybody's doing the same thing, and everybody is either choosing thoughts that cause suffering for them and maybe a whole bunch of people, but everybody has the exact same superpower, the superpower of choice. And
Right.
that's to get to there. is the work, is the absolute exhilarating work. Question everything you believe.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, that's so true, and so the superpower of choice, you can choose suffering or you can choose joy and bliss. It's always there. It's right in front of you every single moment. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful point. And by the way, I think maybe we should go a little deeper on this idea of always being right. And we can do that as a separate topic, I think, because I'm sure we can have some real fun with that. But I agree with you. And part of the effort here is not so well. First of all, I don't think it's possible to be wrong or right.
Mhm.
I think it is possible that you may have a perspective that doesn't serve you very well. You may have a point of view that might be contentious with other people. There's all those possibilities, but it doesn't mean you're wrong, nor does it mean you're right if none of those other conditions happen to apply. It just means when you're right, you kind of feel more, let's say, joyful about the thoughts that you're having. Whereas if you feel wrong, it's more like, oh, maybe I'm not so good, or this or that, or whatever story I'm making up about it. So when you find yourself saying I'm right or I'm wrong, either one of those, you're either choosing joy or you're choosing suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's interesting how you brought those together into a really nice package. So
No, I love that. And, both of us have studied the work of Dr. David Hawkins. And when we look at his map of consciousness, neutrality is higher than righteousness. It has to be, because we can't move beyond what is happening to be able to observe it and to recognize that it's all happening in consciousness. You can't get to that without accepting all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's
right.
got to be permissible, because if the creative source has given us the ability to create and to have infinite possibilities, and all possibilities are possible, then we've got by definition, we've got to accept them. And once you accept all of them, like you were saying, the good, the bad, the ugly, the right, the wrong, the whatever, then it becomes neutral. It doesn't have a positive or a negative to it. It just is. And
right.
that's why, in looking at what's happening in the world today, I'll pick on, our sweet holy brother Fauci. So this sweet little dude has a pretty incredible role that he's playing in this lifetime, where he has found himself in a position of power. And of course, that's all relative, right? He has this position of power, but he wouldn't have that position of power if we didn't believe he had power. He only has power because we believe he has power. Those of us who are waking up, well, we know he doesn't have any power than we do, because we're all the same, right? It's neutral. Nobody has any more power than anybody else. So as we wake up and we begin to pull out of that, we stop having fear for the decisions that he's making, because we're not buying into that game. We're not looking to somebody else to tell us what we can and cannot do. He, on the other hand, who has his psychology has been inflated to believe that he's Mr. Science, that he is the ultimate source of rightness about this particular topic that he happens to be in charge of. Look at the journey that he is on. Is it possible for him to get curious about another way? Of course it is. But in this lifetime, from what we're seeing, and I shouldn't say in this lifetime, right now, what I'm observing is that he really needs to be right about what he's doing, because his needing to be right is causing so many people to push back and say, that's your perspective. I have another perspective. You've got this science. I've got this science. No matter what we're using, what is really fun for me is to see the world, more people pushing back against each other, because I love the energy that is created from the friction, the pushback. because to me, it's showing me that people are coming alive and waking up. You first have to come alive. You have to want something better than what you've got. Otherwise, you're in that ignorance is bliss bullshit thing that so many people buy into. I did too. But when there's this pushback and you got somebody saying, no, it's going to be my way, you've got somebody else saying, no, that doesn't sound right. It just creates this tension of right and wrong, creates such a beautiful, magical, miraculous tension that I'm super excited seeing. I'm just excited seeing what's going to be transpiring here in the next, I'm going to say, couple of weeks or maybe months. But by the end of this year, a lot of things that we thought was the right way, we're going to find out was really the wrong way. And things that we thought were good, we're going to discover they were not. And things that we thought were bad, we're going to discover they were good, all because of these different perspectives and need to be right by mere mortals. We're all playing roles here. So,
so you brought up a really good point here, and I just want to bring it back. You had your fists coming together with one force, the right force and the wrong force coming together and having a conflict. Now, on some level, we have to make a decision, right? And now I know that you and I have talked about some of this other stuff in a separate conversation, private conversation that we didn't record. But basically, the idea is each of us has the opportunity to comply with what the so-called experts and authorities want us to do, or we have the choice not to comply. Now, at some point, it's possible that those compliance enforcers may come along and push, and come right into your space, and you don't want to comply. So I'm just curious, at what is your response now when they get right in your face and try to force you to comply?
Well, since it hasn't happened and I'm not concerned that that's going to happen, I haven't really given that thought. But
for the sake of other people who might be thinking about it.
Yeah. So for the sake of other people, I would have to do what I always do, which is in that moment, determine what is mine to do. What is it that God's or spirit, whatever, what wants to happen through me, because I am the creator of my reality. So if I want to have the experience of being a victim and somebody's forcing something on me, well, I'll have that. But if I don't want that, I can very, very much in that moment say, no, I don't want to participate in this, and say, well, you have no choice. We're going to put it in you. I may just say, well, go ahead and shoot me with it anyways, because my mind can override what you think you're doing to me. If I decide that there's nothing in there that is going to be harmful to me, there won't be anything there that will be harmful to me. I'm in the place in my journey that I am training my mind every single day to be very clear that I'm not going to entertain things that I don't want to experience. And if I don't want to have an experience of something harmful, I can still have the experience of connecting with these beautiful beings and saying, hey, you lovely people, with your white lab coats and whatever it is, and your big guns and your big syringes, you know what? You can just go ahead and put that in my body, because my body is not going to accept anything that is not meant to be in it. So let's just do it the nice way. We're all brothers and sisters here. We're all one here. So I prefer to live from that place, if that is the path that I'm supposed to go down. I don't think it's going to get to that point. I think it is like that in many places in the world, and it might even get to that point here in the US, but it's not going to get to that point for me, because I see the unraveling of what is happening faster, because people are learning about their psychology, or learning that they've been, like you said earlier,
manipulated,
indoctrinated, we've been manipulated, we've been programmed into disempowerment. And what's waking up that pushback energy is the energy of courage. And courage, of course, French word, has to do with the heart.
Mm-hmm.
We are activating a level of self-love that says, I love me more than I am willing to do what you say to get you to like me. And that level of activation of self-love is basically it's a return to the light. It's a return to the truth of who we are, because it returns us in our own mind to the awareness of our equality with everybody. Once we know that we are worthy, nobody is going to put up with this, this dictatorship, because a dictatorship needs victimized people. And if you're feeling worthy, you're not feeling victimized. And what's going to happen is all of these actors on planet Earth are basically saying, I'm done. I'm done with this play. We're done with this storyline. We want a different one. And we're all basically going to walk out of the set. And we're just going to create a new.
That's a wrap. Yeah. Well, I love that. That's a beautiful way to look at it. And I think that there's lots of value in that, because you can say no without necessarily being in resistance. You can say, no, I choose this instead. And thank you for your concern, but this is my preference and this is my choice. And so I really appreciate your perspective. I think you've obviously done a lot of work on this stuff on yourself, and your wisdom just keeps blowing me away. I love it.
Keeps blowing me away. I'm like, where did that come from? But it's just, it all goes down to really understanding the distinction between the psychology, which is all the stuff that has been learned, and my spirit, which is what I brought to the planet. And what I incarnated on this planet, they're all little children incarnate, is a wisdom. It's an ability to tap into the source of all that is. That's where I spend my time. I don't spend too much time thinking about my thoughts. I spend time wanting to know what I don't know, and how can I feel more of that, because I know that I access more of the unknown through the lessening of going to my habitual thinking mind to go look for my answers. That's why you can't solve a problem with the same mind that creates it. And
Exactly. Yeah.
I like to go to God's mind as often as possible. And that's, I do it through meditation and contemplation. And,
Beautiful.
it's fun.
Beautiful. Well, it's over an hour now, and we've been just going, hair on fire, to quote your phrase. And I love these conversations. We always cover so much ground, and I think bring a lot of wisdom to the world. So thank you, as always, for being here. Is there something you'd like to say to close?
Yeah, something kind of funny. Two things. So on my website, on lanaorlando.com, I've got that free course called The Soul's Journey, to help people understand the journey of how our psychology gets created and how to unlearn it. But the other thing that I've got to share with you that is so funny is if anybody is on TikTok, go ahead and find me on TikTok. It's lana.orlando. My daughter said, Mom, you got to get on TikTok. People are looking for what you have to say on TikTok. Well, we created my channel, and it's pretty funny. About 4 or 5 days ago, I got started on TikTok, and my channel has actually gone viral. I've got one of my short little videos with my sweet little grandson has like 50,000 views. More than that, it's climbing by the second. So anyhow, I entered the world of TikTok, and it's so much fun. I'm actually dropping truth bombs in TikTok, and people are enjoying it. So are you on TikTok? Are you on TikTok?
No, I'm not. But who knows? Maybe I'll do something like that.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm having fun.
Well, I'll have to look you up. So it's lina.orlando on TikTok.
Yes, apparently I joined a long time ago, or somebody set me up, maybe one of my assistants, but I've not been able to access that account, Lina Orlando straight, but Lina.Orlando is the one that I'm actually playing with right now, and it's a blast.
Well, I'm glad. That sounds so exciting. So thank you so much, Lina. And thank you all for watching. It's been a blast sharing with you about this topic of getting psyched out. The recording of this and all my other videos will be up on my website on yourlifemasterycoach.com. So here's me, David McLeod, and my partner, Lana Orlando, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. Bye-bye for now.